When we talk about intimacy, we often reduce it to the mechanics, the body, the technique, the choreography of desire. But the truth is, seduction lives in the spaces between the physical. It lives in anticipation, in presence. In what isn't said but deeply felt. A kiss especially is never just a kiss. It's a language, a code, a message sent not just through touch, but through intention. And if you want to touch a woman in a way she can't resist, not just in the moment, but in her memory, you have to understand that the most powerful places to kiss her aren't always the ones you've been taught to prioritize. Because what she truly responds to is not where your lips land, but why they landed there. Too often men focus on physical access rather than emotional meaning. They chase sensation without understanding significance. But when a woman feels seen, when she feels that you've tuned into her in a way others haven't, that is when she begins to melt. That is when your kiss becomes irresistible. Let's take, for example, the forehead. Simple, right? Innocent even. But a kiss on the forehead done with intention communicates more depth than 100 kisses on the lips. It says, I care for you. It says, you are safe here. It signals protection, warmth, tenderness. And believe it or not, women crave that. Not because they are weak, but because their strength has often come at the cost of softness. A kiss on the forehead allows her to put her armor down. It touches not just her skin, but her psyche. Now consider her hands. Have you ever kissed a woman's hands, not out of obligation, but out of reverence? Think about it. These are the parts of her that hold, that build, that work, that nurture. And yet they are often ignored in intimacy. When you take her hands and kiss them slowly, thoughtfully, you're saying, I see your effort. I admire your essence. That kiss becomes a moment of acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is erotic because it speaks to the soul. And then there's the neck. Yes, it's sensual. Yes, it's traditionally intimate. But again, it's about how you kiss it, not just that you do. The neck is where vulnerability and strength intersect. It's exposed, it's delicate. And when you approach it not with hunger, but with awareness, the impact is entirely different. You're not consuming her, you're connecting to her. The truth is, a woman doesn't want to be overwhelmed by your desire. She wants to be chosen with it. She wants your attention to be curated, not scattered. She wants to feel like you've studied the architecture of her body and her emotional landscape. She wants to feel that your kiss is not accidental but deliberate. And that deliberateness, that's what creates emotional heat. That's what builds psychological seduction. We live in a world where physical access has never been easier. But emotional access, that's rare. And that's why the men who learn to master the psychology of kissing, not just the technique, stand apart. Because when you kiss a woman in a place that's tied to meaning, you are doing more than stimulating her, you are anchoring yourself in her memory. And here's the part most men miss: women are narrative-driven. We don't experience intimacy as a series of isolated events. We experience it as a story. Every kiss, every touch, every glance is a line in the novel of connection. And the most memorable chapters are the ones that carry emotional symbolism. So when you kiss her in a place that surprises her, not because it's exotic, but because it's emotionally intelligent, you create an imprint. That kiss on her temple when she's stressed. That light brush on her collarbone when she's deep in thought. That kiss on her cheek when she least expects it but most needs it. That's not just affection, that's intimacy with awareness. And awareness is the highest form of eroticism. Because you see, seduction without awareness is manipulation. But seduction with awareness, that is art, that is presence. That is mastery, and mastery is what compels a woman to surrender. Not just her body, but her trust, her curiosity, her longing. What most people confuse is that sexuality is about performance. But it's not, it's about presence. It's about depth. It's about knowing that true desire isn't sparked by novelty, but by nuance. And nuance lives in the places most people overlook. So if you really want to kiss a woman in a way she can't resist, ask yourself, what does this moment need? What is she feeling right now? And what kiss would honor that feeling? Not override it, not bypass it, but meet her in it. Because when a woman feels met, she lets go, she leans in, she softens. A kiss is not an entry point to sex. A kiss is a mirror. It reflects your awareness, your respect, your restraint. And paradoxically, that restraint, when done right, is the most seductive thing in the world. So don't ask, where can I kiss her to turn her on? Ask instead, where can I kiss her to make her feel understood? Because the man who understands her is the man she can't resist. We live in a culture of speed. Fast food, fast sex, fast answers. And that same rhythm, this need to rush through everything, has infected our most intimate spaces. But real intimacy does not thrive in speed. In fact, when it comes to desire, especially feminine desire, slowness is power. Slowness is not a lack of confidence, it is confidence. And that's something very few men understand. You see, most men approach physical intimacy with a silent urgency, as if every moment needs to escalate, as if stillness is a threat to momentum. But when a woman feels rushed, even subtly, it doesn't matter how attractive you are or how good your intentions might be, she will begin to contract emotionally. Her body may complain, but her spirit withdraws. Why? Because women are not drawn to haste, they are drawn to presence. And presence requires time. It requires stillness. It requires the courage to wait without needing to fill every silence. When you kiss her slowly, not just because you're trying to build sexual tension, but because you genuinely want to experience her, That's when something deeper begins to unfold. That's when the kiss becomes magnetic. A kiss is not a stepping stone to more, it is the more. If done right, it can say everything that words cannot. But here's the nuance: when you slow down, when you linger, when you resist the urge to go somewhere else, you're communicating something profound. You're telling her, I'm not afraid of your complexity. You're saying, I can stay here. I don't need to conquer this moment. I want to explore it. And this is where real masculinity comes into play, not in domination, but in containment. The ability to hold space without collapsing under the weight of emotional nuance. When you kiss her shoulders, the inside of her wrist, the curve of her back, not as a prelude, but as a ritual, you invite her into a different tempo, a different frequency, one where she doesn't have to perform, one where she can breathe. This is where so many men misunderstand the female erotic response. They think desire is ignited by stimulation, but in truth, desire is more often awakened by safety. And safety does not mean softness, it means certainty. It means the man is so grounded in himself, so present in his own body, that he does not need anything from her to feel valid. That's when her body begins to respond, not just because she's physically aroused, but because she feels emotionally free. Free to open, free to surrender, free to be without self-monitoring. And that kind of surrender doesn't come from pressure. It comes from patience. There's a paradox here, one that many never learn. The more you rush, the less she feels. But the more you slow down, the more she reveals. Slowness is not hesitation, it's mastery. And women feel the difference. They feel it in your hands, in your breath, in your silence. When you touch her without rushing toward outcome, she recognizes a rare kind of man, one who values the process of connection more than the goal. This is what creates erotic tension. Not the mechanics, but the waiting, the not knowing. The not having to have her, a slow kiss on the neck with no agenda, a pause before your lips even touch hers while your eyes study her like a piece of art, a hand that lingers on her back as if there's nowhere else it would rather be. These moments don't just turn her on, they pull her in. Not because she's being seduced, but because she's being invited. An invitation is the difference between control and connection. If you truly want to understand feminine desire, you must understand that the journey is the seduction and the slowness. That's where trust is built. That's where energy is exchanged. That's where a woman begins to feel like she's not just being kissed, she's being witnessed. There's something inherently erotic about restraint, when a man holds back not to manipulate, but because he's enjoying every second of what is. It creates a gravitational pull. She leans in not because you're taking more, but because you're taking less assumption, less need. And that makes space for her to feel more anticipation, more awareness, more mystery. Women crave mystery, not confusion, but mystery. A sense that this moment cannot be predicted, cannot be controlled, and cannot be duplicated. That only you in this way at this time could make her feel this. And slowness is how you create that mystery, because in slowness, every kiss becomes a question, every touch becomes a suggestion, every breath becomes a tension waiting to be answered. There's a kind of masculine presence that doesn't chase, it doesn't demand, it doesn't perform, it simply holds. And when a man kisses from that place, from the calm center of his grounded self, it changes the dynamic entirely. The kiss becomes less about taking and more about tuning in. This is what women are starving for. Not more stimulation, not more noise, but more depth, more attention, more attunement. She doesn't want a man who overwhelms her body. She wants a man who awakens her soul. And that awakening does not happen in haste. It happens in the pause. In the breath between kisses, in the moments where nothing is happening, but everything is felt. The men who understand this are rare. They're the ones who walk into a room and don't need to announce their presence, because their energy already has. They're the ones who make a woman feel seen before she's even spoken. And when they kiss, they do it with the full weight of that presence, slowly, deliberately, fearlessly. Because to kiss slowly is to say, I am not afraid of intimacy. I am not in a rush to escape your depth. I trust that what's unfolding here deserves my patience. And that trust, that's the kiss she can't forget. There's something few people talk about when it comes to seduction. Not just sexual seduction, but emotional and psychological seduction, the kind that lingers long after the moment has passed. It's this: a woman is not most drawn to the places that are physically sensitive. She is drawn to the places that are emotionally significant. And the places that are emotionally significant are often the ones tied to her vulnerability. We often think vulnerability is weakness, that to expose it is to risk being seen as fragile. But in truth, vulnerability is where intimacy begins. It's the threshold between performance and presence. When a woman opens that space, when she shows you the parts of herself that are tender, uncertain, or unguarded, she is inviting you into something sacred. And how you respond in that moment tells her everything. This is where your kiss becomes more than a gesture. It becomes a mirror of your emotional intelligence. Think about this: a kiss placed on the lips is expected, it's familiar. But a kiss placed on the small of her back, unexpected, unspoken, intuitive, that kiss carries something deeper. It speaks to her nervous system. It says, I know this place isn't loud, but it matters. Or the back of her neck, especially when she's not anticipating it, that area where tension gathers, where her thoughts swirl. That kiss doesn't just arouse her, it grounds her. It tells her she's safe enough to unravel. The parts of her body she doesn't emphasize, the ones she doesn't advertise, those are often the most intimate. Not because they're hidden, but because they carry her history, her doubts, her longing to be understood beyond aesthetics. And when you choose to kiss those places, you're telling her, I see what others miss, and I cherish it. That right there is the moment a woman falls, not for your body, but for your awareness. There's an intimacy that's created not in grand declarations, but in quiet gestures. When you kiss behind her ear, not just out of desire, but because you recognize that it's a place she flinches when she's overwhelmed. It becomes an anchor. You're not stimulating her, you're reading her. And the act of reading her, of paying attention to the language of her body and emotion, that's what creates deep eroticism. Because real seduction is never about performance. It's about perception. The most powerful lovers are not the most aggressive. They are the most attuned. They notice the shift in her breathing. They feel the difference between her leaning in out of habit and leaning in out of surrender. They don't ask, how do I get her to want more? They ask, what part of her haven't I fully listened to yet? And often that part is physical and emotional. The curve of her waist, the dip in her lower back, the space just under her collarbone. These are areas where women often carry subtle emotional tension. They are places tied to posture, to memory, to how the body responds to life. And when your kiss lands there, not out of strategy, but out of reverence, she doesn't just feel desire. She feels understood. There is a particular kind of intimacy that happens when a woman feels that you are kissing her where she lives emotionally, not just where she looks good physically. You're not trying to consume her beauty. You're trying to meet her truth. This is why emotional vulnerability is erotic. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. And in a world where so much is filtered, curated, and performative, what's real becomes unforgettable. So much of female desire is tied to emotional recognition. When a man sees her for who she is, not who she pretends to be or who others want her to be, something opens inside her. And if your kiss carries that recognition, it becomes a healing act. It becomes less about taking and more about witnessing. There's a deep craving in most women to be touched with intention, not as an object of pleasure, but as a complex, layered being. A woman's greatest longing is not to be worshipped, it's to be known. And the irony is most men bypass the opportunity to truly know her because they're too focused on reaching the next level of physical access. But when you let go of outcome and instead ask, what part of her needs to be loved in this moment? Everything shifts. Sometimes that means your kiss is playful, sometimes reverent. Sometimes it lands on her lips, other times on her sternum or her inner arm or her ankle. And it's not about the spot, it's about what it represents. That you're paying attention, that you're in tune with not just her arousal, but her humanity. And perhaps most importantly, it's about you being in tune with yourself. Because a man who is disconnected from his own emotional body will never be able to meet a woman in hers. If you avoid your own vulnerability, you will unconsciously avoid hers. And your kiss, no matter how technically good, will never reach her. So here's the deeper truth. Kissing a woman in her most vulnerable places requires you to first kiss your own. To know your own softness. To befriend your own fears. To stop hiding behind performance and step into presence. Only then will your touch carry the kind of energy that creates true intimacy. Only then will your kiss land not just on her skin, but in her heart. Because in the end, the place a woman can't resist being kissed is the place where she feels most seen. And to be seen, not for what she offers, but for who she is, that is the greatest seduction of all. And the man who learns to kiss her there, he becomes unforgettable. There's a moment in intimacy that most people miss, because they're too busy trying to perform, impress, or anticipate what comes next. But this moment is subtle, sacred, and disarming. It's the moment when connection becomes mutual discovery. And it usually happens when you stop trying to be interesting and start becoming interested. You see, the deepest kiss isn't the one that gets the biggest reaction. It's the one that pauses time, the one that catches her off guard, not because of boldness, but because of attunement. It's the kiss that makes her feel not only wanted, but wondered about. And that kind of kiss doesn't come from confidence alone. It comes from curiosity. Real intimacy, real seduction happens when you kiss her with the curiosity of someone meeting her for the first time, even if you've known her for years. It happens when you approach her body not as a roadmap you've memorized, but as terrain that changes with her mood, her season, her silence. Because a woman's body is not fixed, her sensuality is not linear, her emotions are not logical. And the man who understands this, really understands this, becomes a rare experience in her world. Most men believe that attraction is about certainty. But true attraction, the kind that draws a woman back to you again and again, is born from mystery, not manipulation, but a willingness to stay in the unknown. And the unknown is terrifying for people who need control. But for those who can sit inside it, it's where the deepest bonds are formed. When you kiss her not to confirm that she still wants you, but to ask the question, Who are you today? That's when she starts to unfold in ways even she didn't expect. That's when your presence becomes a mirror that reflects back parts of herself she may have forgotten were even there. Think about it. When was the last time someone looked at you, not to evaluate, not to desire, but to know you? That's what she's craving. That is what makes your kiss irresistible. Not just lips brushing against skin, but a moment where you are fully there, eyes, body, energy, meeting her with presence, not performance. This is the point most people never reach in intimacy. They plateau, they grow familiar. They kiss with memory, not with presence. But the couples, the lovers, the rare encounters that change you, those are the ones where each touch feels like it's happening for the first time. Where every kiss is not just a continuation of the last, but a brand new conversation. And that conversation deepens when you stop thinking in terms of what she likes and start tuning into how she feels. Because even she doesn't always know what she wants. She might not be able to explain what's missing, but she knows when it's absent. And when your kiss lands in a place that aligns with her inner state, whether it's playful, protective, erotic, or reverent, something opens in her. Something that logic cannot unlock. You don't need to always get it right. That's the other myth. The goal is not perfection. It's presence. When you're fully in the moment with her, even a kiss on her shoulder becomes meaningful. Even a brush of your lips across her spine becomes a question. Can you feel how deeply I'm with you right now? And when she feels that, when she feels that you're not kissing her to get something, but to be with her, her defenses drop, her performance fades, her sensuality rises, not from pressure, but from safety. Because here's the paradox: a woman is most turned on not when she feels pursued, but when she feels chosen and understood. And understanding doesn't come from experience. It comes from attunement. It comes from being awake to her shifts, being willing to relearn her, to explore her like she's an unfolding story, not a solved equation. That kind of kiss, curious, respectful, alive, becomes something she cannot forget, because it made her feel not like a conquest, but like a mystery worth unfolding. Now, most men think mystery is created by withholding, by pulling back to seem elusive. But mystery, in a real relationship, is created by showing up differently, by being so present that you notice her in ways no one else does, and then responding to that noticing. Kissing her ankle after she's been on her feet all day. Kissing her temple after she shares a vulnerable truth. Kissing her palm and just holding it there for a moment, as if time doesn't exist. Those aren't tricks. They're truths. They communicate something that words cannot. I'm not just touching your body. I'm paying attention to your soul. And you know what? That's the kiss she remembers when she's lying in bed alone. That's the kiss she returns to in her memory when she's wondering if she's still desirable. That's the kiss she compares every other kiss to. Not because of the skill, but because of the meaning behind it. A woman's body is not something to be solved. It's something to be savored. And when you kiss her with that mindset, with reverence, with curiosity, with full-bodied presence, she begins to bloom. Not perform, not please, but bloom. And that blooming is not about you. It's about what you awaken in her. That's what makes your kiss powerful. That's what makes you unforgettable. So don't rush to impress. Don't try to decode her or outsmart desire. Stay with the mystery. Stay with the moment. Kiss her where she hasn't been kissed, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And do it not because it guarantees a result, but because it reveals something sacred about who she is. That's when a kiss stops being an act and becomes a revelation.